Hi, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be on this conversation with so many colleagues. And especially thank you, Tina, to the very inspiring presentation of very important topics on urban living, which obviously they come from a city we all admire and follow in terms of forward-looking urban sustainability. So I will be much more modest, and I will only speak about, let's say, the approach of our practice and our experience in project. Uh, as ZAHA architect has the pleasure of being in this field for over 30 years. Myself, I've been in the practice over 21 years. So I started with a fairly young architect and a practice of 20 people. With ZAHA, we build up a lot of projects, and we had the opportunity to work on many cities. And this is a map of some of our recent projects. As a practice, we believe that architecture really can play a crucial role in shaping social and environmental sustainable cities. And obviously, we work at different scales. Sometimes it's a urban planning, a master plan, which has a certain impact. Sometimes it's a smaller project. But I think what is important that this is the spirit and that you put in every project. I think has been said already. In 2030, over 80% of the population, the world population, will be living in cities. And this obviously put more pressure to study and to try to achieve what we want from urban living. As well, we had recently something completely new, which was the COVID pandemic, which again has put some, let's say, question about aspects of urban living which were given for granted. Although I believe that the COVID, once it will be over at a certain point, what it will do on the long term, obviously on the short term has been a complete disruption of our way of living. On the long term, it will not really create new trends or new way of living, but it actually will accelerate some existing trends which are already happening since a few years. One of those is actually the request for building which are more healthy, more sunny, more sociable, more sustainable. This is a very high bar for a single building. I think I want just to show you a few of the examples from our practice which may fit this ambition. First one, it's a public building. You can see it's over, let's say we started design over 20 years ago. So it's not, as I say, it's some of the trend of improving urban living are not new. In this case, was a competition for a museum. It was in the site of a former military site. And as you can see, it was completely surrounded by eye wall. And the whole city block was completely inaccessible from the rest of the city. I think that was a great opportunity for us to explore the idea of building porosity, which is something we were discussing with ZAHA. So how to make a building that per se is a sort of enclosure, to make that formally, but as well in terms of experience, as much porous as possible. In this case, you can see we started with some ideas of having a building which is not one object, so it's not a self-contained, but it's a sort of field of element which are picking up from the existing urban environment in terms of direction, in terms of grain. And as well, you can see the first ideas developing how to interlock. You can see existing building on site, which we decided to retain. Actually, the brief was suggesting to demolish completely the area, but we retain most of the more important building. And we imagine the new museum as a sort of, let's say, grid or a sort of field of many elements, starting from the existing building on site to a point that it didn't have a facade on the main street. The idea of porosity as well plays with the idea that the outside, the outdoor, and you can see the landscape, is as important as the building itself. So it follows the same design, direction, and quality. And then there are a number of indoor or outdoor spaces in between the two. So the idea that completely from the military side, which was enclosed, to completely open up on the two sides the new art center. This is some of the images during construction or the first exhibition. I think it was a great achievement in the sense that we created something in which the visitor could explore freely the interior, not be regimented by a room after room. But most of it, we're proud that it had become, in very few years, a real square, a real place where people meet, not necessarily to visit the exhibition. A lot of its spaces inside, you can go without ticket. It's activated 24 hours. So when I go there, I see, let's say, the old people in the morning chatting, the families in the afternoon. And you can see there are spaces which are covered, they can open to public. I think the idea of porosity, it comes to this attitude, not to do, let's say, a sort of tower of an enclosed volume all the time, but engage as much as possible with the context. In terms of building as well, obviously, energy sustainability and environmental sustainability is one of the main drivers of our design. This project as well is from a few years ago, but it's still quite groundbreaking. It's a stadium for a small sport team close to Bristol. The owner is let's say, entrepreneur in the field of renewable energy. You can see his campus here. So the brief was very clear. He wanted a stadium which with the lowest carbon footprint possible. And with our consultant, we imagine we could achieve only if we use for the whole structure of the building, for the whole enclosure, natural sustainable source timber, cross-laminated timber. As well, we refused the idea of the car park around the building itself, around the stadium, which is connected by a tram with the city center. You can see all the elements of the stadium are from a cross-laminated building, which can absorb a lot of recycled material, not only on the roof, well as well on the main structure of the building itself. And again, it's conceived as a community stadium. You can see that it's completely open to the outside. There is not the overwhelming presence of retail, of car park. And this has been a great achievement. And with the local authority, we're working now on the construction stage. Building as well can have a nice social value. I think this is another example of one of our projects. This is in Cambodia. It's an institute for research, but at the same time, it's a memorial for the victim of the Khmer Rouge. This was done in collaboration with one academic from Cambodia, which himself, he lost his family during the genocide in Cambodia. So it was an highly, let's say, sensitive theme to put in a building form. As well, there are very grave environmental issues with rain and with climate change in the area. So I think on one side, we wanted to design something which is sustainable as a building fabric. And you can see we resort again to the structure of timber and the local way to do spaces with modular elements, but as well to create a landscape in front of the building, which we as a water reserve when the monsoon rain pours in, and in order to not flood the rest of the city around it. I think this sensibility, it's important for every project, as well the cultural, let's say, sustainability is part of our future urban life. I think another element, as I said, there is some acceleration of trend, and one of this is the data-driven design. I think many firms, like the one that they spoke before me, they mentioned this, and we're not the only one, but obviously we in-house we have we're around a team of 20 people. We call it the code team, only working around data-driven design at all level, both for fabrication or for big data or for geometric, let's say, solution. One of this application was, let's say, was very interesting for a collective building. The collective is it's a company which does co-living building for student or for young professional. I think we started this with, again, monitoring one of their existing premises in terms of occupation of the public space or the common space versus the private one, in order to size properly the private unit, but as well in order, which we design as a prefabricated box, but as well we wanted a data-driven program to really determine the design based on parametric component, which are the distance between the residential cells, the module, the clear sky view, and the sign orientation. So with the system that generate a number of, let's say, options, you can see they're all valued on a numeric basis, but as well, in terms of fabrication, we work with companies in order to achieve the maximum prefabrication. I mean, it's clear to everyone working in the industry that the off-site fabrication is the future. First of all, because it's polluting less. The second, because it's spreading the economic benefit of a building on a larger area. Especially in UK, for example, most of this manufacture are based on the north of England, where the labor it's potentially more available, and where let's say it's possible to have a mass production using renewable energy and to bring inside the finished component and to contain the construction time. So this is so clearly energy efficient, but as well it gives less nuisance to the city and less traffic of heavy truck bringing concrete and pouring wet element. So this is the one study we did for Whitechapel in London. The way this prefabricated system as well can accommodate to the street landscape. Obviously, there is some visual, let's say, consideration to do. You can't just copy paste the same model everywhere in the city. And these are some of the material, let's say, expression, as well with the idea to introduce gardens and production of vegetables on site, on the roof, and between the apartment. So this is a new component and obviously goes on the lower floor with spaces for co-working, with spaces for, let's say, know-how sharing. I think this, maybe at these days with the pandemic, this is not one of the most popular theme, the one of co-living, but I'm confident that after once the pandemic will be out, this is one of the model which will be part of our city landscape more and more. Again, building, they need to be green, they need to be sustainable, as well they need to be healthy. And one part of that is just to reestablish a certain link with the natural environment. I think obviously a building can impose itself on the natural environment or can play with it. And this is a case of a project in Scandinavia, in Sweden, where we were called to expand the existing city pool on the edges of a lake. The idea was to reduce the lake somehow and put an extension of the swimming pool. Instead, we proposed to keep the water as it is, to make the building as compact as possible, and as well to play with the formal edges of the building and the water in a way that the two, let's say the building component, the natural one, they play together, and as well by the use of natural material, they create an environment which is at the same time feels and looks as natural as possible. These are some of the visual. During the winter, obviously the lake is frozen, so it's certain type of activities. During the summer, it's open on terraces. There's as much outdoor space than indoor space here for the swimming pool. So this is in terms of the building. I think there are other issues which the pandemic has brought over to us as designer. And one, I mean, the main one is the work, the office. Design of the office, how will be the working. I think this will be one of the more, let's say, the bigger consequences of this pandemic. Work will be not as it used to be. It will be at home, as we all do. I guess I can see from the background, most of us. It can be on the usual working space. It can be on a third place, which can be a coffee, it can be a park, it can be everywhere. This poses a problem, especially in cities as London, or New York, where there is a consolidated downtown, a consolidated city center for offices, which are a single function, large part of the city. This has been addressed already somewhere else. I mean, we work in Australia quite a lot. I know that this is a project in Melbourne. In Melbourne, which is coming up consistently on top of the quality of living ranking, I think, together with Copenhagen and other Scandinavian capitals. And there was a program that started really 10 years ago to let's say, allow the city center to diversify from the purely office use to a mixed use, which residential, with retail, with hotel, with leisure. I think this site in Collins Street is the main avenue. You can see the type, you can see only one, this glass box there, were many of them that were all built in the 70s as office space. The cities wanted to invest and push for, let's say, a better quality of the building fabric, but as well a mixed use function on the new plot. So the city of Melbourne as well has a very clear guidelines on design excellence and liaise back to the historical. In Australia, the historical is the 20s, this kind of Art Nouveau. But obviously as well as the ground floor and the public realm activation. Melbourne is famous for its alleyways, which are become from, let's say, they started as a delivery side street and now the center of the life in the central business district. And the center, the CBD of Melbourne at the moment is the center of the nightlife of the city. Increasingly, there are bars, there are cinemas, they start to be resident. So they achieve, in a way, a mixed-use community, which goes away from the pure office use of the city center. And in our project as well, we created a passage between the two main streets. We created a building which somehow you can see on the footprint is reducing. So it's opening up. All this paved area is new with a sort of public plaza in front of the building. And as well, we introduce a real mix of living within the tower. The tower typology was given because obviously on that location, there was a taller tower before that was demolished. The mixed-use living in this tower, which we designed to express that, which is changes of shape for the top, which is, let's say, the resident area, to the mid one, which are service apartment, hotel, office, and food and beverage and retail. You can see every time there is a change of the function, there is a common space for the resident or the office worker with a terrace attached. And on one of them, there is a gym running track. So I think this is an interesting example how as well large part of city, which at the moment as the city center are only used for offices, can be reconverted. But I think today we're speaking as well of the different, let's say, trend, how completely residential areas, they can provide a mix of function, maybe with business, maybe with office center. So we can reach what is the 15-minute city, which is the ideal polycentric city where residents can reach by walking or by bicycle all the function they did in their daily life, and they don't need to travel by private or public transport to faraway city center. Speaking of mobility, I think transport and the moving as well, one of the prediction or what the trend that we can see, moving will be faster, cleaner, quieter, and safer. Obviously, will be much more emphasis on, let's say, walking and bicycle lane, and I can show you some project later on where we address this. But as well, I want just to touch on the city mobility and the public transport first. This is an example which I wanted to show of two metro station in Oslo we're working with, is the Fornebu area. This island was the former airport, which was decommissioned, and now it's a mixed-use area, which is a very important urban project in Oslo. I think we did a competition, we won two of them. what is important, the way to approach infrastructure. I think in our office, we believe that infrastructure has to be functional. Obviously, it's an engineering theme, but as well, we're very much looking at the user experience because commuting to work, it's a daily activity. It can be a daunting one, but we want to make it as well an interesting and fun moment and design the building really to offer something to the user that they will use it every day. I think there are two stations. This is called Porten. It's in the business district. The station had two entrances. We designed two pavilions. One, let's say, it's in a little green area, and the other one is in the middle of this very edgy or very square office development. We play a bit with the idea that the station somehow is the bridge between this natural little park and the city and the office block where the other exit is. And as well with the idea that we want to give the user a clear idea where they are in the station by giving a visual reference, or maybe by formally connotate the station entrance by a square or a circle. You can see the two different, let's say, shape of the entrances, but that's why we wanted to give as well something else. We call it the sun below. We want to give the people entering the station a sort of experience of the timing passing on the top. This is a very interesting study we've done with a, let's say, lighting artist, that quality of lights outside, outdoor changes during the day. It becomes from red to more blue and then red again. It comes from a different angle. And we thought it would be great experience for the people using every day the metro once they go down to see that character of lights changing in the station, to know what time or is outside, and as well to have a different, let's say, point of view of the infrastructure every day. In the Scandinavian countries as well, natural light is very, very important. I've found by working there, obviously we have very long night during the winter. So the summer and the natural light is really enjoyed by all population. So you can see how it's a simple system of lighting. They start from the square part of the station, which is the office part. It can change by changing the, let's say there are some LED lighting behind this panel. During the night, you can see a much more warmer color. This is the other side, where, let's say, this is the evening when the sun is low, so you can see this kind of lighting around, and as well at a different time of the day. I think it's a very simple, if you want, a little trick, but I think it gives what is the right focus. Infrastructure and transport needs to deal with passenger experience first, rather than the engineering part, which obviously is taken for granted. And this is the exit on the, let's say, on the park, where there's much more of a bicycle, let's say, parking, and as well the shape, like the rounded shape, are much more speaking with the natural environment. We did a second station as well on a similar theme, to exit, one within an existing building, one on the park. And again, we wanted the station not simply to be a staircase going down, and actually it refers again with natural themes. You can see this idea of the glacier, but as well we provided a very big ramp for the bicycle to arrive directly on the mezzanine and to park their bike there. You can see that is a theme which is very present inside of the station, again plays with natural shapes. And this, I think, it was a very nice experience. We're still working with the authorities on the, let's say, tender drawing. I think we're really enjoying the all hundreds of engineers working on the line, somehow to have something different which will enhance the experience of the user. Speaking of infrastructure, the same apply to bigger infrastructure. This is a high-speed train station in Tallinn. Again, transport is needed to commute from one city to the other. It can be as well a kind of a shock for the city fabric, especially if you have to bring a new train line within a city, which automatically become a sort of cut. And I think Tina was speaking before of the highway. And the rail or the big avenue or the big road in the city. I think the the rail can do something even worse. I mean, just completely cut two parts of the city. So when we designed the station, actually, we look at it as a bridge. That was the main idea of the competition that we successfully won. The station itself is a bridge going up. It's completely open to the public. Then from there, you can go down to the track. But as well, we created another level down, which is a cover square. So you can see the train passing, you can see the level below and the level above, just to as an effort to reconnect and make the infrastructure more closer to the urban fabric. We can scale up as well this concept, as well the level of the airport. I mean, air travel at the moment is really reduced and probably will never come back to the level that was before the pandemic. But still, it will go back to level because people travel for culture, for business. I think we will expect that to come to a level of the pre-pandemic. The question of the design of the airport is a very important one because as a building typology, they are very impacting. On this one, which was a competition we did 2 years ago, is the new airport in Sydney. I think what is important, the client was very forward-looking. I mean, we didn't want an airport which is purely a transport hub. They have a set of principle of connecting the infrastructure with let's say the larger site, which is a suburb of Sydney, and as well to use the highest possible environmental standard. This was our proposal. As you can see, there's something at first which is really deceiving. Means usually you arrive to an airport via car with a taxi with a big ramp. The ramp gets you to the first level. You from the car you go directly in. That's a typical airport. I think this is really the innovation here that we don't allow that to happen. All the activity, all the passenger, they work on the ground floor. There is a terminal station for metro, for bus, and then we arrive in this area, which is a plaza, we call it. So from here, you walk, you enter to the terminal. From the terminal as well, there is another, let's say, something we're pushing, which is a mixed mode passenger terminal. I think as well, another problem with terminal at the moment, they fully seal air condition, and they don't take the opportunity of natural ventilation. In this case, we design a completely openable ground floor. So in mixed season, you can just allow the air to get in. We design it in a way as well. You can see the recycled timber roof, which allowed a lot of natural lighting, and with the use of double light space to allow this lights to go down the building and minimize as well the, let's say, the lighting request. I'll speed up a bit more because I see maybe I'm going over my time. Finally, the cities, which is our focus. Cities will be more green, will be more walkable, quiet, and bikeable. This is a overall trend which we've been seeing for years, and that will consolidate after the pandemic. I think just speaking of walkable city, I'm quite proud that we did a study on 2017. So it was already 3 years ago. At that time, we were quite, it wasn't received very much by because it sounds a bit crazy. So there was an idea, we call it Walkable London, in which we suggested the city mayor to close up to traffic some major boulevard and to make it completely pedestrian. So our idea was people doesn't walk as well because the bigger and direct route in cities are the most traffic heavy. And you don't want to walk towards it together with a truck or with high noise. So you end up going to car or public transport. If we free up the main avenue, in this case, I don't know if you know London, but you can see Oxford Street, the Strand. If we free up that and we make completely pedestrian, then there's much more chance that people will walk and will bike there. And as well, from that grid, let's say we open up some areas in which the distances are much closer. So I don't have the time now to show you the whole study. It was done by serious computer modeling. Obviously, the the city fabric is very important. So that work in much more compact city, and that's a good case. Atlanta and Barcelona, same population. You can see on the graph the footprint of the city, and as well from the, let's say, from the fact that workplace are concentrated in city center, while residential is spread around, and a number of let's survey demonstrate that the happiness of people, and this is a recent survey in London, doesn't much depend on the wealth of the area, but their proximity to the work and to the public transport. So I think commuting and transport is a real, let's say, a break dealer for the city quality of life. So I just show you, this was the proposal, the main avenue, the secondary one, the areas can be completely pedestrianized. It was this is Oxford Street, is the major road. I don't know what time of the day this was taken, but it's usually a wall of car and buses here. And that was our proposal, how to make it fully pedestrian, how to create green space. We believe that this will bring back economic value as well to the retail and the building around it. And some other, let's say this is again, Oxford Street, which at the moment is completely full of traffic, another major avenue in London in our proposal. I think this we translated into a little project in Hamburg, which is the River Promenade, which per se was a response to the rising water level. So it was a engineering competition to raise that edge in Hamburg. And we make that a long promenade. We put some opportunity for social gathering. I think this is a project which is not really very much published. We're very, very proud of, because it's a response to an environmental issue, which is water level, but as well as giving back the city some, let's say, public space, which was reclaimed from the city edge. As I said, we work on very different scales. Sometimes we're lucky enough to do design of completely new city or large part of the city, which a number of inhabitants. This is one of the examples. And I think I don't have time now to go into detail, but this is called Unicorn. It's a large mixed-use development in Chengdu, which mostly will provide office space for startup, but as well there's a component of cultural, residential, let's say, workshop uses. You can see how the fabric of the city itself is completely different from the one we know. It's a mix of natural and building environment where the boundaries between the two is very much blurred, and where the areas open for public use is much more of what we, let's say, use to the traditional city grid. This is a project which is happening. It's under construction. I think China is the capital at the moment to make this large changes happening. But as well, there is opportunity as well in existing cities. And I think is a project I'm closing with. This is a project for the port of Tallinn. It's a master plan we're doing with the port, which is a large public authority. So just for the one of you that don't know the city, Tallinn is a very beautiful city. It's on the edge of the Baltic. Yes, a city center, which is the castle. And its history is the maritime trade. So the port was a very, very important driver of the city wealth, and has always been connected. The port and the historical city, where there are the churches, the spire, has always been intimately connected. It was a sort of orientation for the traffic, for the portal traffic, to see that city center. The port has become very successful. It's one of the largest passenger ports. You can see the number of cruise terminal there. They connect Tallinn with Helsinki mostly, but as well with the old fjord area. You can see the, let's say, success of the port has been as well an issue, because he has created so much distance between the city center and the port, which was once the heart of the city. At the same time, it's an opportunity because it's a huge landowner of 60 hectares. So in this case, we had the opportunity to propose a new model of city living, which not only, let's say, comply with the requirement of the city in terms of connecting with the historical, but as well with a new generation of user, And Tallinn at the moment is one of the hotspots for innovation and, let's say, new technologies. Our idea was based on the 15 minutes city. It means there is a promenade, we call it the stream, which reconnect the old port and the new development, which is completely pedestrian and bicycle. And that is the spine of the project. The old development and the old project look as new terminal, new cruise terminal to rationalize the traffic, as well to provide the new mixed-use areas, all interconnected by a pedestrian connection. And as well on the areas where people with car need to access the cruise terminal, we divided the two on levels. So they go underground and they always have an interrupted public areas, which is interconnected with green. The master plan is continuing now. I just show you some of the, let's say, the detail, let's say, palette of planting and mix between the green and the, let's say, the mineral. This are the future expansion on residential areas. There are residential areas, office, there's university. There are some leisure area on the other side. So we try to create that mix of function, and always as well putting a lot of attention on the edge of the sea because of, let's say, historical nature of the city, but as well the opportunity that there is there at the moment. So we started as well how this will be developed within the year. It's a 20 years project with the financing of it, which needs to be sustainable, and as well how to provide few landmarks to, let's say, terminate the boulevard on the edge of the sea. So I think I apologize if I run over my time a little bit. I always get a bit taken over by explaining our project. And yes, as I said at the beginning, I didn't want to give a, let's say, a theoretical lecture, but I enjoy to share with you how we apply this principle of sustainable and socially inclusive city within project at all scale. Thank you.